Hey there, I'm David Campiti with Red Giant Entertainment. You were expecting Benny Powell, he's right here. We decided to tag team you today.
And we have gotten your questions. It's taken us a bit. We've gone through on all of this stuff, spent quite a bit of time consolidating, coming up with basically categories. So we want to make this very easy rather than a hodgepodge jumping around a lot. I do want to say I appreciate all of the questions that everyone sent in. Hopefully we can answer as many of them as possible. And just want to say thank you for your continued support.
So get yourself a coffee and a snack because this is going to take a little while because you folks sent a lot of questions.
So
all right. Let me start then. What's the current status of the giant size line? Has anything changed?
Actually, right up front, I think this is a good question because it's something we need to discuss in depth. We spent the past several months going through with our advertisers, with our distributors, with making sure all of the various components, what works best for everyone, what everyone's most comfortable with. As everyone knows, we had a bit of a false start last year, unfortunately, and as part of that, we learned quite a bit. So it has come down to a facet that one of the things we need to do to make all of the various advertisers more comfortable in this process is to make it more accessible. See, the way advertising works is they set up a budget in general for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, even a whole months or even a whole year. Mm-hmm. So this has them having to create a budget and put us into their budget, sometimes at either the last minute or stretching things out. We've created terms, which is one of the things that we've done for them, giving some further longer terms, which is all fine because of factoring, and I'll discuss that here in a minute. But more importantly, what many of them requested was, at 1 million circulation a week, that's a huge commitment on their budget. It's a incredible opportunity for them, and they do like it. But right now we're a bit of an unknown commodity, and understandably, we have done our giant size line, our giant size number 1. We did our 0 issues last year. Both were necessary and good introductions to these groups. But what they want to see is how it is going to work in Toys R Us, how it's going to work in the comic book stores, how it's going to work on the web, how it's going to work on the digital platforms, etc. So what we started to hear in a lot of the pushback was that they wanted, in essence, a smaller in. So we, in discussing with everyone, and everyone seemed to agree, was we decided for our launch, for the first year only, we're going to take, instead of doing 1 million circulation every week, we're going to scale it down to 500,000, so 500,000 copies every week.
That makes it a lot easier for these folks.
Well, it's the difference between, for instance, 35,000 a week and 17,500 a week. Yeah. So it cuts the costs in half. That cuts the burden on their budgets in half, and it also expands who we could go out to as an advertising person, and all the way down to, it can be as low as 12,500 a week, for those who commit to a larger negotiated price. This allows us to reach a wider net advertiser, because there are a lot of, for instance, video game companies that they don't do as much in print, or they have very much smaller budgets, but yet they still would like to participate because obviously we're in prime placement and things like that. So rather than us being further delayed and going after just the biggest fish and trying to convince the biggest fish to trust us, this will work, that sort of thing. It has proven to be much simpler to do this. Everyone understands circulations go up. Our space is finite with the number of pages we have. Therefore, within the year, we expect scarcity in it, and as people begin re-upping, we plan to roll out. Now, this does not affect the circulation for Toys R Us. Toys R Us is getting the lion's share. What this does is this actually puts fewer copies into the comic book stores. Now, the comic book stores, which is Diamond, the comic book stores, that's going to be fine. They can still purchase the collected volumes, which will be for sale. We're doing our best to make sure that every store who wants can receive at least a box. We've got some other initiatives in the works that actually can help shoulder some of the burden if we decide to expand. So there's a lot of things going on for the comic book stores, but the most important thing was Toys R Us was not affected in this move at all.
Okay, gotcha. So how are we funding the launch of the giant size line and beyond?
Well, as I said, the way we'll be doing this is something called factoring. It's also cash flow funding. There are other terms for it are receivables financing. These are the types of terms for it, but it all amounts to the same thing. We have, in essence, insertion orders or contracts with A-rated advertisers. The advertisers, many of whom you've seen in our giant size number one, are all easily factorable companies. This is done through Geek Riot, who is our ad sales component.
That's what I was going to ask. How does this all work?
Chris Longo. And the company, it's a Texas-based finance company. We've already identified them. We went through a large number discussing with several different sources, investigating. It's a very reputable source. They handle this. They actually even have experience in advertising sales, factoring. They do predominantly for digital, but so this will be their first for print. But what they love about our model is, unlike the other advertising sources, we actually control our circulation. So because we're doing everything on a controlled basis, there's no ups and downs. See, on when they factor others, they're estimates. So that's how we'll be handling that.
So do you plan on factoring all the ads, just some of them, one of them?
Initially, we'll be factoring most likely all of the ads, but it's not a huge loss. In fact, what we've negotiated out is quite simple. And I'll tell you, this is how the factoring works. So you get, let's say, I'll just use some fake numbers here for easy math. Let's say you've got $1 million in receivables from XYZ video game company. And over the course of XYZ and all these other guys. So let's just take 1 month as a for instance. Let's say it's $1 million. They give you upfront 90% of your receivables right at the beginning. Okay. So you take 90%. That means we would immediately get $900,000 that would be coming to us. Now we don't get all of it. Some of it actually gets sent to Geek Riot.
So they get their commission.
They get their commission. We take and get the lion's share of I believe that's either 10 or 10%, I think, is or 15%. I forget. It's either 10 or 15% is Geek Riot amount goes directly to him, and the rest goes directly to us. So this company disperses correctly to both of us, and that's another thing that's really nice about this is there's no delays in us trying to get money to Chris, and then Chris trying to get money to us, and then he's got tax liability on all this stuff. It would have been a nightmare.
So you've got it worked out pretty simple and clean then.
Exactly. And so what that then does is that gives us that amount. Now, how much? That doesn't mean that the factoring source takes 10%. In fact, what they do is however many months before they are going to receive their money, it's 1% off per month. So let's say it takes 6 months, as a for instance, they would get 6% off the top. So in that same, and then we would, once they get their money, then they disperse.
So ultimately, in that instance, we would get 94% of the.
We and Chris Longo would get 94%. So in that instance, he would get 15% of 940,000. We would get 85% of 940,000.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it's a very clean, very simple thing. It's not a huge loss, and obviously the money means more to us now than it does 6 months from now.
Yeah.
And having to take out other notes or any other finance source. So long term, we can phase this sort of financing out as we get more and more and more, then we can cover our costs. But to speak to our costs for a little bit as well, because that's one question that wasn't asked, but I should probably go over. What we've done, and this is part of the what are the changes question. We are initially, because of time, at least for the foreseeable future, going to be printing in Canada with a company called Transcontinental. We worked with Transcontinental as a test with giant size number 1 to make sure how that process all worked, and
it went very smoothly.
And Dave will talk on the next series of questions more about that. But what we found is that it truncates the amount of time necessary, and we were able to negotiate down a price that's very low, as well as they already have the facilities set up for Toys R Us for the creation and the insertion of the bags. So what's all going on with, for instance, the bags is that we'll talk about this in production. They're going to handle all of it. So we're not having to do multiple companies or things like that. So
I'll give them all the details.
So
all right. Obvious question: have we factored anything yet?
What we're doing there's some factoring going on right now. Chris Longo had already sent out the bills for many of the giant size number 1 ads. Those that he hadn't, he's compiled together. It's a few of them, and they're doing a test run with this company out in Texas. I believe this week that paperwork has been sent out.
So this is one of the great reasons you did the giant size one for San Diego, was so you had an opportunity to factor to make sure all that was working smoothly before we launched the real weekly books.
Well, giant size number 1 was a test run for a large number of things. Number 1 was we wanted to reintroduce ourselves to the advertisers, show them here's what the books are going to look like, here's what your ad's going to look like. That's why we did the same number of pages. That's why we did fewer ads, but that was because of how many pages we had of content. We also we wanted more content, so we had a limited space, but we sold out the entire book. That was what was important. It was filled up. David actually created a ton of house ads that we didn't even get to use. So that was a fun thing to bump. So the giant size number 1 was important for that. It was also great for us to use as a test for the factoring. It was also really important and we'll talk about this in production, for other production reasons. So we'll get back to that.
All right. the ad revenue from the giant size lines, it go directly to us or through Geek Riot like it did before? Or?
Well, when we stop factoring, like I said before, it'll go when we factor, it'll get sent directly to us through the factoring source.
Oh, that's okay. That's right.
But whenever the ad revenues come in, when we're no longer factoring, yes, that does go through Geek Riot, because even when we're factoring, for simplicity's sake, the factoring source shows up as a billing for Geek Riot. So
okay, gotcha.
It's completely seamless as far as our advertisers are concerned. They don't even know that there is a factoring source involved. This allows us not to come across as any sign of weakness or anything like that. But it also is a smart way of utilizing the resources that we already have without having to take out onerous loans or things like that.
I got you. All right, so November 4th is the target for the launch. Will you do some sort of full-blown marketing campaign, and what would it entail?
Yeah, we'll be doing full court press. We'll be reactivating a lot of our web stuff to re-engage everyone into our comics through web. We'll be re-engaging. We'll talk more about how we'll do that a little bit later. We'll also be doing some online advertising as well as print advertising and things like that, as much as we can to reach out. Primarily, our targets are going to be to the retailers. So we've got some retailer campaigns we'll be doing to get them involved, because the readers at the end of the day are not going to understand or as easily as or be the right target, because who we need to activate are the retailers for the comic stores. Now, Toys R Us, yes, Toys R Us is going to have their own marketing campaign and things like that to advertise this, but where we're going to be involved is also with the retailers, because we want each retailer to utilize this as a means to drive new traffic to their stores, to get new revenue, to build up their audiences, because ultimately that's one of the biggest goals here, is to strengthen the retail market as a whole.
Yeah, this is something brand new to them. They've never gone through something like this.
They have, but they haven't. It's, in a way, this is Free Comic Book Day every week, as opposed to once a year. So, you and I both have sat across from numerous retailers. I went to the summit last year in Atlanta, the Comics Pro, and you went to
the one in Vegas.
The one in Vegas. And it's funny to me how it was we had to explain to them that this is Free Comic Book Day, except they're not having to pay for it.
Yeah.
See, what's different on Free Comic Book Day is they actually pay for every single book that they give away, up to 25, 50 cents, something like that.
Yeah, for Free Comic Book Day is expensive for them. They were very clear about that.
Yeah, and we're not charging them. We're simply distributing it through Diamond. All they have to do is opt in. So anyone out there, if you've got a retailer who you want to make sure that your local comic book stores have it, you need to make sure right now that they go and opt in to the Red Giant.
So how they do that? Is it on Diamond's website?
It's through Diamond.
Okay.
They have the code. They can call their Diamond rep. It's super simple. They just say, I want to opt in to the Red Giant. That's it. We'll be doing another final campaign, but most likely there are going to be a lot of comic stores that are going to be shorted. So they're not going to get as many as they wanted, but that's just for the first year. And it's a little nice sometimes to leave them wanting more.
Yeah.
So.
I know in San Diego, we had some retailers coming over. One especially was just so excited to see this giant size #1. He's, please let me take cases for my store. I want to use these. I know what to do with them. I can give them to the children's hospital stamped. I'm gonna do a thing at our local fair where every booth is gonna have a free comic book with my stamp on it to drive them to my store.
And that's what we would want retailers primarily to use these as either outreach through stamping or stickering. Programs like this. These are things we want to put in place. We're looking to create some point of purchase displays because some of them are wanting point of purchase displays that they can put at the register or in an aisle. It's simply a facet of every retail establishment is different. That's the one thing that's unique. You go into comic shops across the U.S., going into a Hanley's, for instance, in New York is different than going into Forbidden Planet in New York. Just like when we were in San Diego, there was a great, it was a Cosmic Comics, I think it was called, or Galactic Comics. I think it was Galactic. Yeah. But right where we were staying, it was a great little shop there. But
who knew you could pile stuff that high against the walls?
Floor to ceiling, and about half of his business was DVD rentals. These comic shops all know what they need to do in order to survive in their environments.
And what's nice is he understood your plan, because DVD rentals would get people coming back into a store day after day, which is exactly what the free comic book line will do for him.
And we gave him a couple boxes and stuff as well. So, he was a perfect example of who we're trying to help. We want to create business for these establishments and drive readership, because ultimately what this does for us is, in driving readership into the industry, it drives readership to all of us, not just us, but Marvel and DC. And the more readers overall, the more healthy the industry is, the more healthy the industry is, the more people, when we begin selling comics, there are to purchase our comics. So the more retail establishments there are to continue purchasing. So if someone doesn't step up and do something to support the brick and mortars, that's going to go away. Now, that's going to be a sad thing, in my opinion.
All right. Speaking of brick and mortar stores, has there been any progress as far as working with the ALA, the American Library Association, on a nationwide level?
And the ALA, we have everything in place. We are with Diamond Books Distributors, which is separate from Diamond Comics Distributors. So we are available to the libraries and all the associations and things like that. However, we want to take and spend the money and go full court press. So a lot of that's going to come after the launch of Giant Size line, because we're putting all of our money and all of our marketing and all of our efforts into this.
Okay. That's it for this section.
And now we have some production questions.
Okay.
I'll ask these for you, since you're our Mr. COO.
Cool.
What is the printing schedule?
2 weeks. It really is that simple. Understand that a printer can print 500,000 books in an hour or two. Theoretically, they can turn a book around in a day. But being put into their normal production schedule, they allow 2 weeks, so they have time to run the printing and the binding and all that and getting them boxed. And generally speaking, it's just a few days. For purposes of our books that'll go to Diamond, they'll just ship directly from Transcontinental to Diamond, no problem. The ones that go to Toys R Us, they will then shift to a facility 20 minutes down the street, where the bagging will go on, and then those get shipped out to Toys R Us. But they allow 2 weeks, which is a very comfortable schedule.
Okay. And now, from how long does it take for proofing? This is one of the questions we've got.
An hour. We have a very sweet system where the proofing can be done digitally. Everything is uploaded with very specific names, and then it goes into their system, and we can see it on the screen exactly the way it will print. We can look at it with all the bleed and trim areas, so all the technical stuff is right, and we can make little adjustments and corrections and so forth. And then we can just toggle between that and the way it will look like with all the trim areas, so that we can put everything in and it looks exactly like it will in the finished book.
It's actually a really cool system. It was developed. Transcontinental said that they spent millions in development with Kodak. So it's an amazing system that literally you click on a corner of a page and you can flip the page over and it looks exactly like you're flipping the page of a book. It
resembles one of the comic apps or
readers.
Apple's app reader that does that,
yeah,
which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a very neat effect, and it allows you to really get in there. So the proofing process, we did the proofing process for giant size number 1. It was a matter of a couple of hours, only because there were some errors we caught in the proof. And when we saw it, we went, oh, okay, made those corrections and uploaded the new files. It automatically gives you the warnings, gives you all of these sorts of things. It's a very, very intuitive system, and we were able to get everything done in a short order, as opposed to standard process, which is you send in the artwork, they download it, they then have to set it up for their system, then they have to print it, then they print a proof on a digital proof, then they have to mail the proof.
So there goes a week.
Yeah. So you end up losing a week, and then God forbid there's anything wrong, then you have to start that process all over again. So this is an instantaneous digital thing. So that's another one of the reasons why Transcontinental makes sense.
Which means, of course, that we can sell ads up to the last minute.
Yeah. That is one of the other fun things. Like, let's say we ended up having a house ad, and suddenly at the last minute we can literally just replace the name of that file and upload it, and boom, it automatically replaces it into their system. People want to know, what is the status of the Toys R Us bags?
I had a conversation with the folks at Transcontinental today about that. We've been fiddling with what to do with the bags, because a machine that will put the comics directly into the bags is not one that's likely to take gussets. And if you've been to Toys R Us, you know that they're very thin bags with a U shape at the top, and they have gussets so they can expand for the wider boxes, or wider packages that go inside. And the printer has been working with Toys R Us to come up with a precise size for a bag that will work without the gussets, so it can properly include the comic. We can't use a standard Toys R Us bag because, frankly, it's too thin for the super fast insertion process of these things, and we wouldn't want to send Toys R Us a bag that would have a cut in it because of the edge of the comic book.
Yeah, and the way they explained it to me is literally it'd be like just shooting something sharp right through the bag, and then the comic goes flying, and you end up with an empty bag and a comic somewhere across the place.
Yeah.
So
right now they're still talking about it. We've offered a higher density bag that's not going to rip. And the design, of course, is still going to be Toys R Us's design, but it's just fine-tuning to make sure what we can deliver is exactly what Toys R Us needs and still fulfills our promise to deliver the
Well, the nice thing is and this is one of the things Toys R Us said is as long as they're getting a better quality bag, they have very little to complain about. So, and they're certainly getting a higher quality bag overall. And so we want this to be as easy and as user friendly as possible. We don't want in any way to cause any new wrinkles in Toys R Us's system, so we can continue to do this for years to come.
Gotcha.
Next question. Now, what is the lead time that's needed for the distributors? We've talked about how long it takes to produce. What do the distributors themselves need?
Almost exactly the same time, a couple of weeks, because it's got to get through their systems. In some cases, we can even trim that by a few days if necessary, but basically 2 weeks or so.
Yeah, and my understanding is it can be, it depends on, and that's a cost. So hopefully we want to do, we would prefer to do 2 weeks delivery time to them, because otherwise we then have to go out to all of their individual hubs, and if we have to go to all those individual hubs, it's the difference between sending one truck to one location versus X, number of trucks to all of the different locations.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and since that's on our dime, we'd rather not do that. Next question. How far out are the stories, art, and advertisers lined up?
And advertisers is going to depend upon its own thing, because those contracts are all different. Stories and art, it's up to 5 issues, depending on which of the properties we started, because some got started ahead of others.
Right. Yeah, we had 2 replacements, Darkon and Shadow Children, which were originally in our lineup, but when we became involved with Toys R Us, we realized both of those titles are a bit too mature.
Yeah, when you have a horror comic written by a real horror author, that's not going to be the Toys R Us audience.
Yeah. I mean, it's there. That was one of the things too. We realized that these were great stories, and we certainly didn't want to cancel either of those. Obviously, I have a great love for Darkon, it being my baby, but.
And Mort Castle's doing a phenomenal job on the writing of that.
Yeah, I mean, Mort's the right guy. So, that also brings up the question: what's the status with Darkon and Shadow Children?
Yeah, well, Darkon, we have a couple of issues in the can, and Shadow Children, I think we have close to 3 issues done at this point. That's Kevin Juer's baby. It's some wonderful stuff with the Vincenzo Cucca artwork, but from the sound of it, it makes sense to hold those to next year until the free line is out there, and basically the money's there. So when we put those out, we do it right.
Yeah, well, that was one of the things we saw last year. We did have them advertised with the launch of Giant Size, but Giant Size people, again, the retailers didn't fully understand what everything was, or the impact, or that we would be cross-promoting. So by putting them out at the same time, the orders for Darkon and Shadow Children were just abysmal. And we decided, let's wait, give it a few months so that these are in the store, so that the stores know, oh, this is what's all going on. We understand this. And then they have the chance to order Darkon and Shadow Children and all of the rest of our titles, which will have the support of essentially 2 million print books and millions more eyeballs online.
Yeah, it's going to help to everything drives people to the comic shops when it comes to our retail thing. The house ads we have will push available only at your friendly neighborhood comic shop, and when you have so many people seeing the comics through Toys R Us or whatever, that this looks interesting, and that'll drive them to the stores.
Yeah. Now, last production question: what kind of revenue split will there be for Markiplier's comic?
Not quite a production question, but usually a revenue split with a partner deal like that is generally half and half after expenses.
Yeah, we generally recoup 50. We recoup our costs, and which includes printing, artwork, any direct marketing that's specifically for that title. For instance, it can cost what is it, like $1,500, I think, up to $1,500 for an ad in Diamond.
Yeah.
As a for instance, and if we did mass mailer emails and stuff that we had to pay for,
So
through Diamond.
any and all costs have to come off the top,
Right.
and then what's left is just split.
Yeah, and that's pretty much how everything works. That is a paid, creator-owned type of title. That does not, by the way, reflect on Giant Size Line, which is a different thing. Giant Size Line, the creators are given a flat bonus of $10,000 as a creator fee, and then whatever page rate that they may get. So we are not giving 50%
No.
on the ad revenues. That's completely separate. So that brings us to the end of the production questions, and
All right, then we'll go on to the next one in a moment. Okay, next up, advertising questions. So it's my turn again.
okay.
All right, so obvious question, what's the status of the advertising sales?
We're working right now on advertising sales. We've got way more than in prospects and everything than we have pages, both in number of advertisers as well as number of pages. We're sitting at roughly around, it looks like around the go no go 50% mark. So we're good on those who have committed. So we need, in essence, around 50%, around, I'd say 18 to be able to do this. We're coming close to that. Looks like no problem. It also looks like we'll be able to fill the rest of the way. There are simply some of the bigger guys that we're doing the partnership deals on. They take out big chunks. We're talking 4 or 5 pages at a time. We'll talk about the content advertising or native advertising, whatever we want to call it, here in a minute. So we're good. Everything looks to be perfectly fine, on track. We don't foresee any problems with it. One thing I do want to explain also is on the costs and everything. By the time we pay for printing and everything, we're looking at costs of, it's around the 20-cent mark, including that and shipping and the bags. The bags, we're finalizing what those costs are going to be, but it's a penny up or down. So the bulk of the costs are that. We're not having to pay any exorbitant fee above and beyond. Now, we were getting closer to 18 cents in China, so it's about 2-3 cents more by printing here, but we save the time. And for right now, time is the more important factor than 2 cents, 2-3 cents.
Gotcha.
And obviously it adds up, 2-3 cents over, 26 million or 25 million copies throughout the whole year. That's a lot, but again, it's a time value of money. So,
Gotcha. Target CPM for the advertising.
our published rates begin at $50 CPM. Now, very few people ever get the full 50, but primarily because there's frequency discounts, commitment discounts, number of page discounts. There's also agency discounts. So we factor that our average will begin closer to $35 and go down to $25 CPM at the lowest. So there are several who are getting $25 CPM, but for our factoring of how much we want go no go, I look at everything always at the lowest cost. So whenever I was talking earlier on that, I'm looking at a $25 CPM, as if everyone's paying $25 CPM.
Gotcha.
Fact is many will average out closer to 30, 35, but again, that's where we go there.
Okay. So 40 pages of ads still the max for the line?
Yeah, that's the maximum. Something interesting happened as we were discussing things with Transcontinental, and that's where we went from 36 to 40 as a potential. What we found out is the way that Transcontinental has their setups, there's virtually no cost difference between doing 72 pages plus a cover or doing 68 pages plus a cover. So the cost difference was non-existent. So that gave us potentially more pages. Now, are we necessarily looking to fill all of those pages?
Yeah,
as
well, there reaches a point. It's like when you pick up one of the women's magazines. You flip through, and there's so many ads, you can't find the articles.
Yeah.
And so there reaches a point where you're flipping through a thing, and it looks more like an ad catalog. And where's the editorial matter? Where's the stories and art that makes the fans want to pick this stuff up? So we have to make sure there's a realistic balance there, or it just ends up being frustrating where there's just too many ads.
Yeah, and that's another thing we wanted to accomplish with our native or content advertising. So
how does that work?
That's actually quite fun. This is the truly unique thing, because it actually is bigger than we've been able to fully explain. How this works is, let's take an example of XYZ video game company. And XYZ video game company has, let's say, as many as 50 IP that they've got out there. Some are new, some are coming out, and some are old. So let's say they've got XYZ Man. XYZ Man was big for them in the 80s, and XYZ Man has a big nostalgia factor. But XYZ Man used to be basically a little pixelated guy jumping across the screen. There's no real story there. There was nothing really to engage beyond people pumping quarters into an arcade. That's where we come in. XYZ Man, in this fake scenario, would be a ripe intellectual property for reviving. Now, what we want to take and do is do content or native advertising where we serialize one issue of XYZ Man across all 4 titles in the given month. So you take week 1, it would be pages 1 through 5. Week 2, so Giant Size Action would have pages 1 through 5. Giant Size Fantasy, which comes out week 2, would be pages 6 through 10. Giant Size Adventure, week 3 would be pages 11 through 15, and then Giant Size Thrills would be 16 through 20. That creates a serialized story in much the same way as the old serials back in Flash Gordon days era of movies. And this is something that's never been done. That accomplishes several things. Number one, it allows for the advertising to be spread out, because here you got 5 concentrated pages of ads, what are essentially ads, but they're content.
So the rest of the world just sees them as additional story and art that they're getting for free from us.
Right. So it becomes yet another, instead of just, let's say, our two comics, there's suddenly a third one in there. Except it also then engages people and lets them know, hey, I want to come back every week to find out what's happening with XYZ Man. Or I came in the middle, what happened to XYZ Man before this? So it engages the readers and gets them into these characters more than any other thing, because content advertising, this type of advertising, is more powerful than any other form of advertising because it engages. Transformers, back in the day, G.I. Joe back in the day, the comic books and the animations were basically the best advertisements for those toys ever. The only reason why they were as big as they were because they had those ancillaries and they were treated well. Larry Hama, one of our writers, basically created G.I. Joe, and I got to tell you, that was the book that got me into reading comics. It was done incredibly well. It was done without being looked at as a standard licensing book, and typically they're treated like second class citizens in the publishing world. Now, that's just the beginning. So we do this. And then next month, well, XYZ Entertainment Company has another, maybe it's ABC Man, and ABC Man will do the same format. But it doesn't end there. This is what is so cool and so unique. We then take and XYZ Man, a few months later, we launch a pay version of XYZ Man published by Red Giant in a revenue split scenario, not a licensing deal, but a true revenue split scenario where XYZ Man #1 of an ongoing series comes out from Red Giant. Now, this has benefited from up to we're projecting as many as 14 million through both, because you got 2 million in print, then you've got the digital and the web. We know how many millions of people see this stuff because we will be putting this also on the web. We'll also be including it in the digital. All these sorts of things. So these comics will have reached an immense audience by the time the #1 comes out. Now again, these are fake numbers, just not concrete, but based on a standard comic price, we across this kind of an arrangement with one company, if we did one paid comic that came out and started every month from this, within the first year, we would, if only 0.5%, so 0.5% of the audience that's been exposed to this decide to buy the ongoing comic, which absolutely doable. We ourselves would make, actually it's the advertiser would actually pay for their own advertisements from it within the first year. Mm-hmm. Within the second year, they would make, after paying for the advertisements, they would clear $6 million. The next year, by the third year, they would clear a return on investment of, and by the way, remember, year 2 and year 3, we go up to 1 million circulation. So their costs went up. By year 2 and by year 3, 20 million return on investment. Now remember, this is a revenue split. We're actually making more than that in that scenario. So above and beyond the giant size line, this is what we're working on. This is when we're saying we're partnering with these big companies. So the ads become the basis of these partnerships with these entertainment companies. And that's just one. So each one that we do, and we're right now talking to, I think it's 4 or 5 of these.
And it's interesting to me because I've been through seeing how reviving basically a dead property has value. Way back when I was running innovation publishing, we did Lost in Space. It was literally a dead license. Nobody was doing anything from it. We brought it back. It was so successful that Viacom made the deal, and there was a Lost in Space movie, which wouldn't have happened without the comic.
Right.
So
and
you've got the great idea here to bring this to the
well,
video.
it's not even just the dead or languishing license properties, intellectual properties. And I don't like to use the term license because we're not licensing. The way a standard license works, and why we don't want to go down that road, is a standard license. You give the minimum guarantees to the license holder, and you give up to 75% of that up front before you've even published. So you could be talking tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars to license it, and then you've got a ticking clock and a deadline and all this sort of stuff. And then if you don't produce what you said you're going to produce, then
you owe the money anyway.
You owe them the money anyway. And this way, instead, what's nice for us is it's more of a co-op, and we're equally embedded in this. Now, the other nice thing about this from an advertiser point of view, it's so no risk situation, because advertising is a tax deduction, pure tax deduction. That means if they're a company that's in the black, they, as I'm fond of saying, they can either give this money that they would advertise with us to us to help make them more money, or they can give it to Uncle Sam, who's really not going to be making them more money. So for us, this becomes a way for them. Let's say they've got a brand new launched video game or app or TV series or whatever it may be. Having a built-in audience of millions has tremendous value to them. It's win for these guys. That's why this is so revolutionary. It also keeps us from having to have, like you said, the women's magazines that are just nothing but ads. And that was really one of the things that began concerning me as we started doing, and as we did the layouts with Giant Size number 1. You could see there are just so many ads, and when you start getting to a point where it's page ad, you begin to be concerned for the user experience, which we do care about. We do care about the readers because we want the readers to be engaged and come back. We don't want them. But if you take 5 pages, 10 pages, 15 pages out of 35 and make them content, let's say we have 15 total of these content pages out that are ads, but essentially content with no ads, because we won't put an ad in between somebody else's content. What that does is it lowers the ratio of ads to content 50% right off the top. So I would love to get to a point where literally we're as much as 90% native advertising, especially with these partners, because then this allows us to have a great relationship with these big companies, these big entertainment companies, where we're building their licenses or building their properties and doing these, and we're in talks with other ancillaries and things like that. So this is really just the tip of the iceberg.
Well, this also explains why it's taking so long to make an announcement, because it's not just one division within the company. It's not just the advertising people are approving an ad, because of just how integrated all these elements are with the other departments of the company.
Right. And we can get into that a little bit in one of the other later sections, but absolutely, when you got some of these multi-billion-dollar companies, and they've got intellectual property. Well, the intellectual property is between the video game division, and you've got the cartoon division, and you've got the live action division, and you've got the action figure division, and you've got the merchandising division, and you've got the even the video game divisions. There's two divisions on most of these places with the video game division. You got the mobile division, and you got the what they call the console division. So you have to get all of these clocks to chime at the same time, and it's a bit sometimes like wrangling cats into a bag. And then you've got this guy here who's out at this convention in Germany, and you've got these guys here that are at this convention, and or this guy just gets back. You know, it's been. What's nice is everyone's all yes. This is awesome. This
but
is
getting
awesome.
everybody to the Thanksgiving table at the same time is a little tough sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah. So.
All right, I guess that's it for this section.
Okay.
So, finance questions. Have you taken out any new notes to date?
New notes. What we've gotten is a lot of, not a lot, a few tranches on existing notes. So that's the bulk of what's out there. We don't have a whole lot of tranches left even in existence, though. So we've been, as we've said over the past year, phasing out as much as we can of the notes.
Okay. So how many convertible notes are left?
Of those that are, well, what we saw, it was an unfortunate thing that occurred because of the delays in the audit, as everyone sadly likely remembers. We had, in December, we were on our way up, and the audits didn't get their auditing done for our K, and this took us basically down quite a bit, but we had everything spaced out on the conversions that wouldn't have like all hit at once. That was the normal way, and that was how we had everything done. Unfortunately, these guys were unable to convert because of Rule 144. Any of their shares to that needed to convert while we were not up to date. And by the time they finally finished the 1K, 2 Qs were due. And that took all the way up until June. Well, as soon as, by that time, we had, I think, 6 guys. It ended up being, there were 2 that I didn't even know about. There were 4, and then there were 2 that had just not converted that we didn't even realize, who hadn't converted. And all these guys, they just had all of these conversions available to them, and boom, they just dogpiled us all at once in June and July and up until now. All of those delinquent and so forth conversions, as of right now, it looks like everyone's gotten all of their conversions done. So everything's been issued. I think we're seeing this week the last of everything that was converted being offloaded onto the market. It's taken the price incredibly down, but this ultimately is all it's just the dump. It has nothing to do with how viable we are as a business or our profit or our prospects or any of this sort of stuff.
It's like the publishing and all the media stuff seems to have almost nothing to do with the way the stock is going.
Stock is quite often perception based. Now it eventually does reflect reality, and really that reality will start coming to fruition in November. Yeah. The instant we can begin making announcements on who the advertisers are, that will help a little bit. But really it's going to be the announcements of finance most likely that's going to affect that.
Okay. Are there any lenders left?
There are a couple of them, again, like I said, with the tranches and things like that. Many have gone. We've gotten several of them have completed their stuff and they're no longer in the picture. I think 3 of them or so, for instance, are now. And one of them, to be fair, has a history of not to name names, but they have a history of giving like very little once a year. So they did a tranche around this time last year, and then they did a tranche the year before. So it's even they are as one of the remaining ones. We have asked them if they want to just cancel their notes and not ever been able to get a satisfactory response from them. They're there.
Yeah. Are there maturity dates of the remaining tranches?
The maturity, well, I think we've had a few that we had that are about 4 or 5 months or so out, if memory serves. So not really anything that'll be impacting right now. I think, like I said, November will affect anything that'll happen between now and then.
I got you. Question on everybody's mind: are you planning a reverse split?
As I've said, we've answered this question numerous times. The answer is, if we're going to do a reverse split, the reverse split will be done only in such a time and way and manner that's really to the benefit of everyone. We really do not want to harm or hurt our existing investors. People were calling for, certain entities were calling for us to do a reverse split, for instance, before all of this, of these note holders and stuff like that, and that would have been disastrous. There's no way we would do that. We're not trying to get a money grab or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. All right. There was a question about when are we starting the buyback initiative, and we'd already done that.
Yeah, we did. In, what was that, 2013, we announced we were going to do a buyback campaign. We did. We had some financing, a source on the buyback campaign, and they agreed to fund us given whether we met certain objectives. The objective of the buyback campaign was to take down the debt, increase the share price, all this sort of stuff, and to also combat what many felt were like shorters and things like that. We did the test run with it, and we hit all of our objectives. The share price went up. It seemed to stop and stifle a lot of the shorts and things like that. And then the funding source said, "Okay, great. No, we're not going to continue." So that is where that went. So we did not continue doing that. And frankly, after we stopped, it started going back down again. So we felt like it might even be a false bubble. Now, could we do a buyback campaign once we're cash flush and stuff like that? Yeah, once we get out from under some of the stuff, we'll look at that as a possibility again.
The big conversions, are they complete?
Yeah, looks like it. I mean, we haven't had complete confirmation, but everything we've seen on our side looks like those are finally over and done with as of this week. Now, whether or not they've completely liquidated on the market, I don't know. But as far as like the requests to the transfer agents and stuff like that, those all seem to have completed.
Okay. There was a question about board members. Were we planning on adding any?
We would like to have eventually at least one more board member, but it's one of those things where when you bring a board member on, it's a bit like marriage. You want, and the only reason we want is we'd like to have 7 in case there's ever a deadlock. We haven't had a deadlock to date, but if it ever came down to it, 6 would be tough and create a deadlock. So we were advised we do want a 7th. What we would look for is the same as we've looked for all of our board members, is someone who brings a different aspect of expertise to an industry where we don't have that representation. with. There are a few prospects and things like that, but nothing's finalized. What is interesting, though, is we are also looking to bring on an advisory board of directors. So these would not be voting board of directors type of thing, but instead people with higher levels of expertise in their field, such as video games, television, movies, the different aspects of entertainment. So they would be bringing in contacts and expertise that we could utilize, and as well as just sheer advice and knowledge and experience that would just help and advance. So we've been identifying candidates for an advisory board for quite some time.
We actually got a question. Are you in danger of bankruptcy?
Yeah, no, that one's just a crazy rumor. See, people think that the share price affects us more than it really does. Not saying we don't care about. I mean, it affects us personally because that's my stock too. And it sucks right now. I put a ton of my own money into all of this, so certainly it affects us personally. But as far as the business goes, the share price isn't what affects what we're doing. What affects what we're doing is the ad sales, the factoring, the partnerships, the creative being done, all of these sorts of aspects. That's what affects us, and we're not bankrupt.
Okay. All right. That's the end of that section.
Okay. These next series of questions are basically about the movie and entertainment space. First up, people want to know what's the status with Magica and Hulu. I'll jump in a little bit on this. People seem to think that there's some big secret or things like that. It's the reality is we are trying still to work with Hulu and figure out how everything works with them. When we put it out in December, that was the end of a quarter. They pay out quarterly. So we had just like a couple weeks there, and we did some testing and things like that. And then it wasn't until like 3 months later that we got any initial indications on that, and it confused us. So then we began looking at our numbers from the next quarter, which took all the way until June before we got those, and the numbers still don't entirely make a lot of sense. There's no like real-time data from them. We can see our data of what we're sending over. That's the one thing that's cool about this process, and what we were trying to do with this process by working with Hulu exclusively is we knew we could take and control how much traffic was going over. Unfortunately, there's some weird thing with how Hulu's tracking or capturing their data or something that we still have not been able to ascertain. We also, this goes through a distributor, so we also had to look, okay, is it a Hulu problem or is it a distributor problem? The one thing, we are very happy with is the fact that our distributor, who's like a distributor / aggregator, they are wonderful. They're great guys. They're very transparent. They took us in, showed us what the data they're getting. We can see straight from the source. So there's no monkey business or anything going on with our distributor. That's important because we want to continue working with them on this. It could be simply an issue with Hulu, but trying to figure that out has proven to be slow and daunting. Unfortunately, because of how slow the reporting process is and stuff on our tests, because we don't try and like put let's put tens of thousands of dollars into marketing and push this, and unless we knew that putting tens of thousands would net us hundreds of thousands, and we would put hundreds in, expecting to get, like, let's say if we put 100 in, we would expect to get at least 300 or 500 or $1,000 back in revenue. So we did very small tests, and it's really hard, this is the problem, with their reporting mechanism to truly ascertain what the results of those marketing dollars were. We'll reevaluate this once we get the big push with Giant Size line, and see if there's something here. We're trying to see if we can work directly with Hulu for better reporting, to where we can ascertain this, because we'll put more money into it. But as of right now, it's just a risk that we're afraid of taking, given the lack of instantaneous information. So that's what's put a stymie on that. But as Dave will tell you, we've got other plans in works.
Yeah, since we're not getting the answers that we expect for Hulu, there are many other platforms out there. So
right.
you have Netflix, Vudu, Amazon, iTunes, or a number of others. So we may be we are investigating all those other options to see where do we go next. Do we try one more, two more? Do we try them all?
Yeah, and that's being discussed literally right now with our aggregator, our distributor. And this is why we were very happy to see that they've been so above board and gone the extra mile, everything seems to be working on that. So we're happy to take and open the floodgates. They've always wanted to open the floodgates, but for us, what we were trying to do was to see if we go exclusive with Hulu, and can control that mechanism, then we could more easily roll out. Unfortunately, we could not anticipate the way that Hulu would report that stuff, and it's not very marketing friendly. So that's I mean, we've done very well, by the way. The Hulu has been very well received. It was in the tops of the charts for a very long time. Mm-hmm. We even went practically silent on our advertising, and it continued to do very well. So this has all been very encouraging, and it'll certainly help us in working with Netflix and the other guys, because we now have a proven track record, as well as other offshoots and stuff.
Yeah. But we've been looking at what else would we do with Magica. So of course, we've talked about, should we try to push Magica as a series that spins off from the movie? Should we do a second feature? Well, we have plans for both, actually. The writers of Magica not only are doing the comic, of course, mm-hmm. But they've done a whole series Bible for what we would do with a Magica TV series, which would have been cool to do on Hulu or one of those other things. And we've also written the story outline for a second Magica movie that would take place somewhere down the road. The ideal would be, we've got the first movie, here's the series, then here's another movie to end it.
Right. And what's nice is, again, with the Giant Size line, as with Magica being part of the Giant Size line, this will get a new influx of viewers and readers and things like that. So we'll be better positioned to make those series and so forth happen. We haven't really been pushing for any of that, because, again, do we want to sit there and go in without all of our ammunition?
Right, exactly. All right, so still on movies. What's the status of Last Blood?
Last Blood. All right. The last notification anyone had out there was, I believe the director was talking about that we were in casting. This was true. Absolutely true. We were going through casting. Now, let me take a step back and kind of explain how the process works. So we had a financing party involved. Now they committed X million dollars or whatever the case may be. I don't know the exact numbers, to finance the film, but they wanted approval of cast. Unfortunately, they've had unrealistic expectations for what their budget would net the type of person for cast. So while we would bring certain actors and stuff in, they were not, Johnny Depp, which, you're not going to get for an action movie like this for less than 10 million, which was more than the whole budget of the film. So it'd be, even if we got him at a half rate, we'd be Johnny Depp in front of a white screen narrating, So it was very unrealistic, and dealing with them had been fairly onerous. Now that relationship has finally expired, so we're now freed up to go out, and we don't want to go back down that road. We've got some other options we're putting into place to get the financing in place and put it together a little bit more realistically. One of the things that people have asked repeatedly about is whether Markiplier would like to play the lead character. Believe it or not, we did ask if Mark was up. Mark's not really wanting to be a movie star per se. So while it was very nice and certainly flattering, he's not interested. I mean, we would like for him to have cameo roles similar to like Stan Lee. I often say he's a bit like our Stan Lee in that regard, because I don't want to be in front of a camera. I hate doing this, to be honest with you, because I'm certainly not camera friendly, but I have a face for radio. But the bottom line is Last Blood is continuing. We still have a lot of the key people involved. We've got some great great science fiction, or what do they call it? Effects guys involved in both the makeup and the digital effects. Everything's all lined up. There are time limits and on contracts and stuff, and sometimes you have to wait those out. So that's kind of happened there.
Your pride and joy, Wayward Sons. Where are we on that movie?
Wayward Sons is, well, it's still where it's been, except they're having discussions with several key writers. I find it a little funny because I actually wrote a script before any of this, the movie script, and it was the movie script that got Amy and Eisen involved, and we got William Morrison Dever involved, that got all these guys involved, and everyone's, oh, we love your script. Your script's great. It's an awesome script. And immediately, now we're going to have to hire a Hollywood writer. So it's a great script. Bye. See ya. So it's I find it a little amusing. One of the problems that they have as they're approaching this is a lot of the writers that they've been talking to, they see everything and it's epic. I mean, the very definition of the word epic, which means long. So it's a 5,000 years of story. So the writers come in and they're like, well, where do we tell the story? Do we go back to the beginning when they're in Egypt and tell that story? So is it a period piece? Do we do something that goes through multiple periods of history? Do we do something in modern day featuring these characters? Do we do something in modern day that features the kids of these characters like we have? So there's been a lot of those kinds of discussions. I've been, to be honest with you, we've been kind of sitting back and letting them just pull their hair out a little bit, because at the same time, we're putting out Wayward Sons in giant size action. And here's irony of all ironies. I just basically have taken and modified the script I had for the movie is the script for Wayward Sons that's in giant size action. So this way, the movie people and the powers that be will see, oh, look, here's this fandom for this story, and here's this great story in comic book form, and it should be a whole lot easier to get them to go, oh, the original script, not so bad. So
yeah, if only they had a script they could follow that would answer the questions.
So, this is Hollywood. Things take a while in Hollywood. This is the way it is. Even if you, for many things, you hear about something on Deadline Hollywood or Variety magazine or something, it can be a decade or more for some things. Now, this applies to basically everything else. It all boils down to, this is one of the reasons for the giant size line. The giant size line is our intellectual property incubator, if you will. It's not simply a, hey, let's keep these out there as these titles and sell the ads. The ads, it's good revenue. It's really good revenue. Don't get me wrong, but that's not our end game. Our end game is the exploitation and development of these intellectual properties in transmedia, which is a fancy term for putting it into movies, toys, video games, all of the different media forms. So we look at this and we see, well, right now we're a great webcomic company. We have great webcomics, great online presence, but that's not tangible to the people in Hollywood. They don't fully grasp. I mean, they're starting to see the power of, like, for instance, Markiplier of YouTube stars just now, and starting to tap these guys with, like, the Smosh movie, which is coming out, or it might have already come out. I don't know, but Hollywood is still a little bit behind on that. But they look and see what the physical comic books. Now, when each one of these comes out, it's reaching more audience than any other comic out there in the world. Well, we go from right now, we're the 80-pound weakling, to suddenly we're the 800-pound gorilla. And we've already seen this. There are a lot of big companies already on all of our properties talking to us. I could name names. There are certainly some big stars that have their own production companies that are wanting to come in. We could sit there and tie up stuff right now for very little money. Sometimes it's as little as $5-10 grand that they want to give you to option stuff. But why would we tie up our properties right now, or try and get them made as low budget films right now, when we know that here in just a couple months, the whole landscape is going to change? So we're not in a hurry to shoot ourselves in the foot. That's what Marvel did. Marvel is the perfect example.
This is going back to the beginning, in the 70s, the 80s.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they were giving out licenses and optioning their characters left, right, and center for a stick of bubble gum, practically. I mean, it was ridiculous. Spider-Man, at one point, James Cameron, right after Terminator 2, wanted to do a Spider-Man movie. Now, it's James freaking Cameron, one of the greatest directors of all time. Certainly one of the biggest name directors. And this is prior to Titanic. And he wanted to do a Spider-Man movie. It was really cool. I was up at Marvel at the time with the pitch. And, like, because of the whole, the Terminator 2, the metal guy, they wanted to use that same technology for Venom. So it was going to be Spider-Man versus Venom. And they ran into a problem where No one knew who the heck had the rights. Everyone and their brother all said, no, we've got the movie rights. No, we've got the movie rights. It took so long that by then James Cameron had moved on. Eventually got Sam Raimi, and those movies happened, and Sony owned it. Now, here's the other aspect of it. Sony had the rights to the movie, and until very recently, Sony was making all of the profit. Because, again, Marvel was not very cautious, nor were they making certain that they did. It wasn't until Iron Man that Marvel actually made money on their own films. They made very, very, very little bit. And studio accounting, there's a lawsuit out there, feel free to Google it, where the Lord of the Rings movies are claiming they have still not made a profit. So the estate of Tolkien is still fighting with them because they claim that they haven't made any money. These movies made billions, and yet they made no money. Figure that one out. So this is why Marvel finally got wise and decided and realized that they needed to. It's okay to have distribution partners and all these sorts of things, but they wanted to be producers in and of themselves. So with that in mind, Marvel did Iron Man, and it was Iron Man. They worked out a brilliant financing thing to where they could be the primary producers, and Iron Man set off the chain of events. So every movie prior to Iron Man, all the X-Men movies, all of the Blade, Fantastic Four, Punisher,
Daredevil. The Daredevil movie was outside.
Oh, I didn't even remember the Daredevil movie. But the god awful first Captain America movie that was out there with an Italian Red Skull.
Yeah, Matt Salinger.
Oh, dear Lord! So there were so many of these. Marvel made no money on it. So the fact that they were hugely successful had very little bearing on the comic book company. So I would prefer to learn from other people's mistakes. So we are not anxious to sit there and go out and sell out all of our rights and suddenly have nothing. That's not the way we plan to do things. That's not how we're doing things. In fact, the deal we have with Wayward Sons, the reason it's there is because it's a cooperative agreement with this other production company. Certainly we have to, they're a more established production company, so we have to be very mindful of what they want to do, but we have full participation. So that's the only kind of deals we really want to be in. Same thing with Last Blood. We had a deal where we had the lion's share of both the control and the financial windfall that would come from it. So we do not want to sit there and go be a company that puts out a bunch of movies but somehow doesn't make any money. It's plain and simple.
That's it. That's it for this section.
Thanks.
Hey there, hi there, ho there. We're back with digital questions. So what's the status of the Bandai deal that was announced last year?
Well, okay. So it's still out there. We still have the agreement. What happened was Bandai had an agreement with us to do, was going to be a Wayward Sons app game. What they were going to do was it's called skinning, which sounds painful, but in essence, it's taking an existing architecture of a game or programming and putting new face and new artwork and things like that over it. So they were going to take one of their card games. I'm not sure I'm allowed to say which, but they were going to take that. We already have all, for Wayward Sons Legends especially, we've got hundreds of art assets that are all in layers and things like that. It already existed, and they saw this wealth of stuff, and they're like, "Oh, this will be super easy, so we can get this done really quick." They unfortunately, we started working with the developer, because Bandai is not the developer on that; they're the the distributor and the producer, but the developer then got purchased by a different company, which has thrown a little monkey wrench into all of that. That is starting to kind of get all worked out, that they're going to continue to work with Bandai. But what then happened was one of the guys who was in charge of mobile gaming, who we worked with to make matters more insane. Although I love the guy, he's a great guy, awesome guy. He took a job somewhere else. So it's just thrown a little monkey wrench into this, and we're still getting everything sorted out. But they still want to do it because, again, it's just easy money for them. It doesn't really require much effort. So that seems to still be in the works, and I'm certainly certain that as we launch with the giant size line, we'll start having them and quite a few other people approaching us as they have.
Right. Chris Crosby's not here, so I got to ask you, what's up with REDGiantComics.com?
REDGiantComics.com is, the architecture's all done. It's all ready. Jenna has already, my wife Jenna, who's also our production director, has already reformatted all of the artwork because for the site. So it's all sitting there, but we're looking at launching it right before the giant size line so that it'll coincide together, perhaps just even a little earlier, but we'll see. The key here is it's not going to be exactly the same as Keen Spot. Instead, it'll be a little bit higher resolution. It'll be more advertiser friendly, and it'll look really good. So we're very happy with how that is all coming together. But the only reason it isn't up is because we did want it to coincide. We didn't want to sit there and have it begin updating and then suddenly stop. So it will have all of our old stuff. It'll have all of our new stuff. It'll have some other surprises in there as well. That is where we will also launch many other titles. Any of our content advertising will also be on there. So it's going to become a very big site quite quickly.
So, anything else you want to talk about?
The other digital projects we're working on. You've heard me numerous times say we've got advertising in print, we've got advertising in web, and we have advertising in digital. And sometimes that goes over people's heads. They don't understand that there's a difference between what's the difference between web and digital. Well, web is like our Keen Spot, will be on Keen Spot, Comics Genesis, REDGiantComics.com. Those are our web. And yes, you can certainly see those on mobile devices, but they're not mobile devices. Digital, well, that's where it's unique. Right now, we're developing an app, our own app, that will do something no one else is doing. First and foremost, you'll be able to, same as on Comixology or iVerse or any of these apps, to buy our comics on the app and download it to your device, and you'll own it. But here's where we're doing something that's completely unique. If you don't want to buy any of our comics through this app, you can get the comics for free with streaming advertisements. Now, here's why this is so unique and so cool. This is all part of what we're selling with our giant size line. So you want to take and download Tesla #1, you're going to have to pay for it. But if you want to stream giant size action, you stream the whole book. And so as you're sitting there reading every page, in between the ads pop up. They've got a timer on them, like a 5-second timer. So people have to see the ads. The ads are now interactive. They can click on it. They can have little animations. They can have a little video. All these sorts of things on either their computer screen or their tablets or their phones. But they never download the free version of it. So here's what happens. say a month later, someone new comes in, well, they're not getting the same ads as before because those impressions have already occurred. It becomes an impression queue, if you will.
So if I go back watching this thing one day and say, I want to read that again, it's a whole different list of ads.
Potentially, yeah. If something's gone out of the queue, so it will pull down. That means someone will have to have internet connectivity in order to view this, but that allows us to control the readership and do these unique full ads and so forth. So that's the price. It's kind of, hey, you want your content for free through your app and you want to own it. Well, we're not going to make you sit through ads, but if you don't mind sitting through the ads, you get it for free. So
okay,
that's the way that works.
That works. That's the end of this section. Thanks. Well, I guess some miscellaneous questions to wrap things up. Everybody wants to know how's baby James?
James, he's good. He's growing like a weed. He doesn't seem to realize that he's a premature baby. So certainly is not acting like it. He's growing by leaps and bounds. But no, he's all good. Caught a little bit of a cold at San Diego Comic-Con, so we got to experience his first cold. But otherwise, he's good.
In a few years, he's going to be quite a Comic-Con veteran.
Yeah. I think we get to say that he became the record holder for the youngest exhibitor in San Diego Comic-Con history. So, with his little Batman cape. And
there we go.
So,
cosplay winner? No, wait. Anyway, we got the question. Some people are afraid of being banned from our Facebook page, so they want to know, what are the rules and regulations?
Well, basically, it boils down to the fact that we're not trying to censor. We're as publishers, we hate censorship. That's not our preferred method of communication or stifling communication. But unfortunately, what we cannot have happen is the Facebook page cannot become seen as anything soliciting in any way, shape, or form the buying or selling of stock. That is not what we're about. We're trying to use it as a means of certainly getting information out. We also have fans who go on this site. We have potential partners checking out the site. We have, certainly investors are all on the site looking at everything. So we don't want to ban anyone, but we have to do this. Many times we simply just delete the comments, but when we've asked someone repeatedly over and over and over again, do not do this, and they just are refusing and outright blatantly continue, then it requires a ban. And it's disheartening every time that happens.
Well, so, isn't there also the common sense thing of a potential advertiser wanting to spend money with us checks out our Facebook page and people are being oddly negative? How is that supposed to attract an advertiser? It won't. So it actually hurts in that sense.
Well, yeah. I mean, I would certainly prefer people, if they've got something negative. I don't care. It's not about me. I don't care. I'm a big boy. You can certainly call me any names you want, or whatever, or hate me, or love me, or what. None of that really matters for the company. What I care about is the company and the longevity of the company and its viability and its how it's seen or perceived in. So these bashers or the people who are disgruntled or upset or we're doing the best we can, but it certainly does not help when the perception for potential potential partnerships and advertisers come on and see all this negativity around us, because advertisers want to see positivity. That's, unless there's some kind of energy drink, I guess. But in general, they want to see positivity. They want to be known with positive brands and things like that. So this certainly doesn't help our cause when people start doing due diligence to find out who we are, and they come across some of this stuff if they dig in too deep. So we certainly don't want, and that has happened, so we certainly don't want to have to sit there and explain this sort of stuff. Thankfully, most of it is not, as we pointed out, it has nothing to do with content or things like that. It just has to do with people frustrated with stock price. But again, that doesn't help.
Right.
So, but to fully finish, so feel free to talk about any things you want. If you have questions about things that are in the Q's or the K's that are financial, finances are fine. You can ask away. I've never banned or deleted stuff of people asking about that stuff. It's people asking things about really the stock, or when they start mentioning buying stock, or I bought this stock and I'm buying this stock. Even the positive comments, which I appreciate. I love, thank you for the positive comments. If you've noticed, we delete those as well. So it's not that we're keeping the positive and deleting the, no, it's very simple. When we see there's stuff like that, then we have to delete. Oh, if it's stuff cursing or things like that, obviously that's common sense. We're going to delete that because there could be kids looking on this stuff.
Yeah.
So
you've already talked about partnership deals and so forth, but somebody picked up on, there was one phrase of something you posted where you said that you were working on a deal that was worth a mint.
Yeah. Well, it was a breath mint. No. No, the reality is yeah, we've got some really cool stuff. This one actually is coming out of San Diego. I have another call with them later this week. It's something totally hadn't expected. It augments things we're doing with Giant Size Line, but this is nothing to do with the Giant Size Line in and of itself. It's all I can really say right now is it's kind of a new platform that will revenue generating platform that's kind of come to our attention, and we're very excited about and we'll let people know more as it progresses, but they're very excited, we're very excited, and everything's moving forward well. So they're gone. I spoke to them end of last week. They're gone most of this week, so I think Thursday, Friday we'll loop back with them, and go from there.
Okay, one last question for you, I think. Is there anything else you wanted to tackle before my last question?
We've talked about people have the delay, asked about the delays in the partnerships and stuff, and a lot of times, we covered that. People had asked about. One funny thing. People keep going, well, what about the deal you said you were working on that was a surprise thing for New York and New Jersey? I've already said what that was. That was actually the Markiplier comic. Having Markiplier, he wanted to make the announcement at San Diego, so that's where we made it. I was hoping to make it sooner. But having the Markiplier comic is a big deal. I mean, here's a guy who Variety magazine listed him number 6 most influential among teens and tweens in the world. He was ranked higher than any movie or music celebrity out there. I was shocked to see he was number 6. Taylor Swift was number 8. This is pretty amazing. His fans, when we were at San Diego, were insatiable. They were before he had even arrived on Thursday morning, they were lined up around our booth, covered the Marvel booth to where people couldn't get to Marvel, went down the row and all the way to the front door, which, if you know how big this convention center, that's all an unfathomable line. The security, before, we didn't even know. All we saw was this, what's covering us in front of the booth. Security came and freaked out about it. We had to it took half of our booth staff we had manning the booth to then manage the line the rest of the time. It was crazy. And by the end of it, they kept blocking Marvel, because we would tell people, disperse, here's the end of the line, we'll let people in. People were taking laps around just trying to get that spot in line. He was incredibly gracious and signing non-stop for hours. It was, the fans were rabid. It was certainly something we've watched and seen as his fandom has grown, and this was by far leaps and bounds bigger than it has been in every year. He's gone. When we went right before we left for San Diego Comic-Con, he had just reached 8 million subscribers on YouTube, and I think literally any minute, if it hasn't already, he's reaching 9 million subscribers. So we're talking a million jump in a month. So that's an incredible celebrity presence that we are very proud of. We honestly were happy to have him on board because of what a creative, smart business young man that he is, and that's why he's on our board. He invested heavily into us because he's a firm believer in what we are doing here. So for us to do a Markiplier comic, he is this, we feel, will be, as a paid comic, an immense hit for us. We'll be doing numerous versions. He actually, even while we were there, he did signed and numbered, I think, was it 300 pages that he's signed already for the hardcover version of what we're doing. So, and we hope this will do well, and then we'll continue doing it. Some even with some of our partners that we're working on and things like that. So that was it's not really had the impact that people realize, but that is in and of itself a tremendous revenue stream, and reaches what we've always wanted, reaches a big audience outside of the typical comic book reader, because we want to expose our IP and everything to as wide of an audience. And that's why the content of Giant Size Markiplier #1 will be all an introduction to all of our IP as he goes through the worlds of Wayward Sons and Tesla and so on and so forth. So this truly was a big deal, and unfortunately, people sometimes I can't stress enough that one has kind of flown under the radar a little bit. So
okay. Last question. Fess up. As CEO, what grade do you give yourself?
I love this question. The easy answer for that is I don't need to grade myself, because that's not done by me. That's done by you guys. At the end of the day, what's going to matter is what happens in November. So feel free to grade me then. Let's see how we perform, and that'll be up to you guys. So I want to just end with this, and I'm sure Dave can speak to this as well. we care about what's going on. We don't want to seem, sometimes because we can't really discuss what's going on with the stock and things like that, it seems like we don't care about the stock, or that we don't care about the investors, or we've taken your money, or what. None of that's true. I take this responsibility tremendously to heart. I care about the investors, the fans. I care about the industry that we're in, because if we don't do something to bolster this industry, who is? We can sit there and complain about it and say, "Oh, no one's doing this," or we can be a part of the solution. And we feel that we have the method of doing that. I care about our artists. I care about our writers. I care about our staff. I care about the investors. Every single one. I've had people send me stories of their lives and that how much they're counting on this. That matters to me. I carry all of that on my shoulders every day. I go to bed every night. This is why I'm working so hard. This is why I've let my own business kind of languish to a great degree. This is why even, how many people would sit there and go, okay, I don't really get a huge benefit, for instance, per se, with Active Media. Active Media as a printing company, for those who don't know, to date I've not charged anything, no margin anyway, for anything we've done for Red Giant, and here I am. We're working with a different printing company, because it's in the best interest of the company, of Red Giant, and that's what matters. There's no self-interest. I take many times, as does Dave, as do we all, and we put our own money back into this. We continue to fund things. We do our own resources. Everything we're doing, because we see this is our future. We see the legacy that we can leave for our industry, that we can leave for all of you, for everything. So this is what matters. So,
so we're just weeks away of people seeing some really great books. I'm so happy that we had a chance to create this stuff. If you haven't seen the giant size #1 that came out for San Diego, it's still available for digital download. So check it out. It shows all 8 of our IPs that will launch the giant size line, and I think you'll be really happy with what you see.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.